Hey everybody, welcome to our live webinar of the Light Lab with Justin Townsend. My name is Nick Gonsman. I work for ETC in New York City. Y'all are joining me in my apartment, so there's a lot of you coming in, so everybody's just got to squeeze really tight, I think. Joining me is Justin. I'll give him a proper introduction in just a second, as well as Sam Punia, who's going to be helping us out with the video conference today. Before we get to Justin, I just want to take you through a couple of quick things. ETC Study Hall is what we're calling all of our outreach stuff that we're doing during the crisis. So that includes things like this, live webinars, Instagram office hours, videos of the day, and of course, a lot of you have taken advantage already of our learning stage courses that we've made free. A couple that are coming up tomorrow, we have Lowell Alcott discussing how to educate with augmented, and then this Thursday, Ann Valentino is going to do her control theory discussion. And it's a why does my desk do that? So that's a great chat if you can tune in. We're going to be scheduling more of these as we continue to all be stuck inside. So keep an eye on the study hall part of our webpage and on social media, and we'll be posting more stuff. The Light Lab, as it's titled, is a series of events that we do on the first Monday of every month here in New York City. We have a nice little office space in the theater district in New York. And in the evening, on the first Monday, we'll open up our doors and have sort of a casual chat with people and about topics that are of interest to the lighting community. Justin and I have been talking about getting one of these together for many months at this point, and with changing circumstances, he was kind enough to come along with us digitally. So we're certainly happy to have him. Justin is a lighting designer for all sorts of entertainment. You can look at a few Broadway credits, most recently Moulin Rouge the musical, Jagged Little Pill. He's been the creative director with Drake on a few things. He has Tony nominations, Drum Desk Awards, many other things. In all of his copious free time with those few things going on, he's also the assistant professor at Brooklyn College, which is dedicated to affordable theatrical education and training. So Justin, I'm super happy to have you here with us, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to pass you the beach ball, and it is your presentation.
Thanks, Nick. Just checking on the mic here. Everything's all set? That's great.
Yep, you're all good. We can hear you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. What a crazy time to put this together, because, I was spending this past week, been thinking about it for a while, about how to respond to Nick, and then spending this week really assembling slides, really assembling conversations with my colleagues, and I missed them. It's crazy. It's a crazy time to be so, in some ways together, but also really far apart. I've been fortunate to connect to a lot of my students digitally. I'm sure you all are doing the same thing through Zoom and whatnot. But it's a really special, another special sort of way to recognize what we do. And so it's special. I'm happy to give this talk, but it's a reminder to me that what I do or what we do, I imagine, is really work in a team and work in a team in a room. And so I'm going to present some ideas today, some things that I've been working on and things I'm really excited about. But they come not just really from me, but they come from a list of colleagues and associates and assistants and production electricians and sort of everyone's sharp minds trying to make this, steer the ship a little faster. I had a colleague, a photographer, who talked about, revolution in art isn't about doing a 180-degree change. It's about doing just 1 degree. If we can just sort of make ourselves 1 degree faster, smarter, have a 1 degree new idea, that's when we're actually starting to get somewhere. So I don't know, maybe this is all old-fashioned and kind of embarrassing, or maybe there's something useful here, but I thought it would be at least worth sharing. So here we go. First piece I want to talk about is Jagged Little Pill. It's about a family who lives outside of New York City. And what happens to them, right, as they wake up. And so there's this chorus that comes through and sort of wakes up and surrounds them. And then we, using the Alanis Morissette songs and the book by Diablo Cody, which to me sort of just blew me away, connects all the songs in a sort of a, what feels to me effortless, right? Instead of it feeling like Alanis Morissette, young Alanis Morissette saying, and then what happened to me, this is a book musical that's a jukebox musical. Ricardo Hernandez did the scenery, and he's such an amazing creator and artist. You know, he talks about scenery as a scenic designer who doesn't like scenery, which is sort of a lovely way. We start in this very empty space, and he and I talked about, you know, how do we electrify, how do we make the space real, and where can we put tools. One of the first things in the production is the band comes rolling in from the side. This huge lighting truss comes from above, and then these floating panels come through that will then take projection through black tracks, and then those are what we call house panels, and then these are sliders. So this guillotine of panels that can then move or track or move throughout the space, and really make any shape that we want to throughout the room. So you see a symmetry moment here in the beginning, right? This is the couch on stage. And then when we go, and then they can slide the panels, right? So the composition of the space really becomes infinite, right? Here's isn't it ironic? It's in a classroom where they're sort of schooled on what ironic perhaps actually means. But you can see that it's a space that needs to be nimble, dynamic, that needs to have a lot of flexibility in the lighting and the lighting structures, so that I could keep up with sort of an evolving script, an evolving point of view, and then an evolving sort of visual vocabulary that was happening. We did a huge amount of storyboarding ahead of time, and then in the theater during our dry text in the morning, recomposed and rescheduled things. All of those sort of floating. Let me go back to here. All these panels here, those are all moved by the actors. And so each of those really needed to be able to say, well, maybe we can't do this. Maybe they need to do something different. So you can imagine that the lighting needed to be as fluid as all of these changes happening. Let me just roll through. So I took brought some stills in here for us to see. So pretty exciting, right? Like the set designers incorporating some of the lighting design into the preliminary lighting shots, right? We know that having uplight is going to be exciting for us, that sort of uplighting the panels so that it has a sort of otherworldly, exciting, bold color, keeps the color low as opposed to if we were lighting them from above, that the color wouldn't be as profound or as deep and rich as I know we wanted it to have sort of a rock musical feel. And it's complex, right? So it's a jukebox musical that's also playing as a book musical, as a story, but then it has really dramatic, silent and quiet moments, in addition to having bold sort of rock and roll gestures. So the piece sort of needs to live in a lot of different worlds. So here we see now how it starts to come to life, right? This is in it ironic. She's sort of steps aside. I won't sing for you, unlike some of my board operators who've heard me before on this channel. Going through, so we go into a church. Everything is actor motivated and then also made with the video. You can see that the sort of amazing black tracks technology that many of us are starting to use now. There's this on the corners of each of those panels has a flashing LED light in a spectrum that only the cameras can see, so that in space the projector knows where the physics of those panels are. It's pretty remarkable. But it means, again, there's a lighting design that needs to support projection wherever they want to put these panels, however they want. And by the way, we sort of need to see the story really clearly. So can you keep calling out the people who are singing, right? So then the uplight then becomes useful in creating the chorus, allowing that chorus to have a sort of otherworldly quality around them, because it is a very real story about a family outside of Connecticut, and all of a sudden people are shouting and jumping around in these intense costumes. You know, who are they? What are they? And so transforming them into a different place, I use the architecture of the room to really do that, right? You see here part of the really exciting thing that we lined, Chris Tilking, the associate on the project, really helped me with is, and Justin Freeman, the production electrician, we lined every vertical and horizontal with pixel tape. So it's a huge amount of control, of 1.25" control on RGBW pixel tape for all of these panels. So as panels are closing, I can have the light sort of increase, right? 1 through 300 delay, 0 through 2, and then the console then does the math of, oh, wouldn't it be neat if it just slowly crept up there, right? And that sort of points at what I've been really interested in my cueing developing. I'm sort of in hopefully the middle of my career. I came up using the Obsession 600, watching Chris Ackerland design with the Obsession 600, and that was a really keystroke heavy programming, right? Blind, next, part 8, enter, last, part 7, enter, last, part 6, enter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that you sort of made steps and then would say, channel 1, enter, last, channel 2, enter, last, channel 3, enter. So really controlling each channel and putting it in different parts or putting it specifically where I want it. And now what I'm finding is more and more is using big global grabbing, right? Grabbing a big global amount of channels and then letting the math of the computer decide how to do something. 1 through 200 at time, at delay, 0 through 2, and it expands across the stage. So it's totally simple in its thought leap, but it's not having to go in manually and saying, okay, so how much of a delay would be 0.1, 0.001, 0.002 by hand, right? Using the machines to do. Who knew we could use a computer to help us out? The rig also uses a lot of light and space, so the band keeps tracking on and off. Right here, you see a line of X bars that fly in. Those are the sort of fantastic tools. Again, each one can be pixelated, right? So we can start chasing effects, start using effects across them. They're powerful tools, but it's a lot of data. And that's sort of what I want to talk to you about today as we look at this is yeah, to look at the shows, but also how myself and my team, or at least through me, are really starting to think about how to manage so much data. So that simple and really clean images, this is a dance in Act 2, made with 3 lights, can also pop, right? So it's that combination of both these really feathered, really ornate, rococo in some ways, cueing of all these channel numbers that maybe the audience only sees as an energy move, right? That and then also snapping that expectation and bringing it into sort of what a bold quality of light could be, or simple, right? 6 simple backlights, a line of lights on the ground. So then also this is, as we progress through the show, then really flying in those trusts, using the muscle of this entire rig. You can see these beautiful X4 XLs, big, powerful lights, all spotted down, all driving a lot of horsepower from behind. But again, a lot of units and how they're using throughout the work. And then we sort of, at the end, come back to Mom on the couch and follow her story as she comes back together. I promised, I warned Justin Freeman I'd put a shot in for him. I want to call out a couple of people here. This is the Broadway lighting equipment list. So you can see it says press. There's some modified things just to reduce the clarity here for us. Chris Tilking was the associate, and then Kate McGee was the assistant calling spots. Jimmy Maloney, Justin Freeman did the production electrician, and Brad Gray working as a programmer. He worked both with, we've been working together a lot recently, and I really respect sort of our conversation about programming. I'll talk about programming in a few minutes. But working on, a couple of things. Here's the equipment list. I wanted to just show this. So a couple of things. One thing that was really important to me was this idea of how quiet can the rig be. You go into these Broadway theaters, there's a lot of moving fixtures, and then you sort of sounds like an aircraft carrier full of all these tiny little fans burning in little small containments. And what was really important to me was to say, how can we let the audio, these Alanis Morissette songs really, really, really float in the space as quietly as possible. So The encores really is a great choice, worked well for us. They always have a little bit of fan noise, and so the quantum washes, 82 of them, look at that. Which, although there was some noise, for me, you walk in the room and you go, wow, is the rig on? There was some projector noise, that was the sort of nature of the beast, but I was able to greatly reduce the fan noise in my collaboration with Jonathan Deans. And I think that's a little bit of what I'm interested in right now, is how do we start to help continue to make our colleagues' work soar, right? So it's not just about how I can make the best pictures, but how I can unify or help support what also is happening in the room. I go back and forth about when I can do that. Sometimes budget-wise, it's unaffordable. You'll see there's 43 bars total in the show. There's a line of park hands on the back wall. They don't do any light on the stage. All the lighting on the stage is a moving fixture. I feel very fortunate that we were able to work a great deal with PRG to really allow this to have the show to have a horsepower that it needed to really have the dynamic ability to respond to all of the video projection, all the different scenery locations, rock and roll necessity, and that sort of intimate, bold style that I hope to get. And then you can see it's environmental light did what, 343 feet, 688, right? It just goes, it's an absurd amount of pixel tape. So thanks to our friends at ETC, you should work with them, I like them. They were able to work with us on the EOS TI and unlock the desk twice. So we went to them and said, we need some more addresses. They said, okay, well, we're working on a beta thing, we can try. And then we tried to do it again. Well, we can do it, but there's going to be some things. And we said, we just have to have it. We have to do this. And the ETC is a company I really admire because they're ahead of the game, right? They know this is coming. They're already working on it, and they were able to really support us in doing this. And Brad Gray worked specifically with them detailed, but they came to the show. So we were working really hand in glove with them, figuring out how can we start to process all these channels, right? We're seeing 37,000 addressed channels, patched addresses in the show, and which is I think about like the days of coming up of like, wow, they have a whole 96 rack. That's so cool. Now it's the amount of data that we're moving and then needing to have throughout the room. You'll see there's a huge amount. There's 13 pucks on the show, which is a remarkable amount of pucks. And this is a little idea that Justin Freeman had for me about using the follow spots. We'll look at that in a moment about what that is. We're a Broadway show, and there's not a 96 rack on the show. It's a 48 rack, right? There's again, so wow, what's happening to the rig of what the expectation of lighting a Broadway musical is, and shifting away from a more conventional state to how do I'm just kind of trying to push how many moving lights I can get into the show, because I need to be able to respond quickly to the director's needs as fast as I can in the room and the set, and then all the automation is happening, and the video the video designer is trying to make, Lucy's trying to make the ideas come together, right? So how does it all work fast? Well, you just need moving lights. You need one other thing too, it turns out, which is a fast and smart program. There were 4 follow spots in the booth. We worked very hard with the producers and the general managers to really point that if we wanted to have bold video, 4 family members, and all this dynamic scenery, I needed to have clear front light into the 4 family members, that I could not do the show with 3 follow spots. That's a huge, huge investment for general management to go from 3 to 4 follow spots. The issue is, of course, we're having to pay for the labor of that. And that's something I'm very interested in supporting our, how we can make this, we use our money to spend it on people as opposed to stuff. And here we used it really smartly, I think, because the 4 follow spots were able to really cleanly carve what I needed away from everything happening in the room, right? And then when we have really big numbers, say with all that red truss number with all the backlight slamming at it, I can lay 3 follow spots on top and then bang, bang, bang. That brightness also helps me cut through. I worked with using a BMFL follow spot. This is the first time I used them, and I was really excited by what happened for us. So the first thing is, the follow spot booth in a Broadway house is the size it is. It doesn't matter what I want it to be, it's the size it is, and it's very expensive to change. And so if we were to look at conventional long throw arc sources, that would be impossible to fit in the booth. So the second I start changing that, we start talking about construction or seat kills. All of these things are unacceptable in terms of it adding cost to the production, right? There's the art of what I want to do, and then there's the reality of, yeah, but that's going to cost us a lot. Are you using the money wisely or using our resources wisely? Interestingly, though, these 4 smaller units then do fit in the booth, right? So we can have 4 operators fitting in the booth, which then can contain the sound of the fan. These are the 4 arc sources on the show. I was super excited by the brightness of them. It really worked well for us. And then with the long throw lens, that worked really well in this Broadway house. But interestingly enough, we ran into a real problem on the first few days of teching, which is that the iris at the throw we were at only came down to a shot, maybe a quarter shot, right? And what I needed frequently is to sort of crank down into a headshot and then open up as they, so that if an actor was moving next to a projection panel, we really crank in to see just their face, right? And then open up as they walk away. But the iris had a physical limit. So previously, historically, when we ran into these with the conventional lights, you'd pull out the iris, maybe the production electrician would file down or come up with some technique of getting the iris a little tighter. And of course, what we're concerned about is the iris is going to burn out, right? So the iris in some ways becomes a perishable or a consumable. But Roby was really supportive for us, and they went and worked with their engineers so that we could actually have a setting that would crank in even tighter and then reduce the lamp intensity so as not to burn out the iris. Now, we're watching the irises. We're going to keep seeing what happens. This is the amount of lamp hours and how tight. I frequently crank in that tightly. And through the sort of leadership of Matt Nesky, we're going to see how they do. That's the longevity of them. I'll be curious to see what happens. So it's a moving light with a handle on it. It's I love this idea in the theater that we're robbers. That we sort of like someone made the lighthouse, and then we got the clever idea to shove it into a can and put it on the stage, right? Do that same lens. And here we are robbing from ourselves, right? We've made a light. Why would you ever invent a follow spot moving light when you could just use the thing and just disable the motors? And so what you're seeing here, I've done this on several shows, and they're starting to get much more specific. You'll be able to purchase better tools for it. This is a real custom fit by Justin Freeman, some real smart technology added by him. But you can see the sight, you can see the handles are starting to be a little bit less than, I think I did a show once where it felt like I had to drill through the plastic and bolt it on by hand, and everyone felt like we were, we're talking about 360 cues again and making theater that way when we sort of put these handles on. It still feels a little bit like like a transformer or something like that. But what's really exciting, if you see in this lower photograph, is actually a display, and what the follow spot's able to look at is a cue stack with labels. And so just as I'm cueing perhaps the intensity or anything or color or anything I want to from the desk, I can have the operators with manual overrides, or that I'm controlling them, and they control the iris and the intensity. So it's a new version of data problems, because I'm allowing myself to work differently with the operators than perhaps traditional, right? Normally, right, like the person coming on and off stage, well, now I can do a color roll as a part of a cue. Now I can lock in the iris where I want it if I want to override it. If I want to put in a gobo or something like this. These particular units don't have a gobo, but I'm allowing myself the cueability of fixing what's going on. the other thing that's really interesting about this being a moving light is we had so many different skin tones on this production that now no longer am I limited to the six different colors that I can put in, but actually I can decide very specifically. Could you just give me Kate? Could you give me just a pinch more magenta, please, on that shot? Or it feels a little green on Derek in this shot. Could you tidy that up, please? So that specifically we can really tune color, custom tune color for every shot, every time, very specifically. And in this show, where we're watching this show for a month and a half, we're able to first block it in, layer it in, but then every time we're going through and really tightening up the notes, getting it more and more specific. Really powerful tool to let these let us work through. I didn't want to show you a light plot on the show. I wanted to show you the magic sheets, and I'll give you a little bit of a walk around here. This is Brad Gray's work. I feel really fortunate that he's been taking an interest in collaborating with me as a programmer. His work I find superlative in the way we speak together. You know, there's different people who work different ways, and so I feel really lucky that Brad puts up with me. This is a collaboration between the associate, in this case Chris Tilking, and myself and Brad as we talk through how to do it. And you can see this is, and so this is sort of what I would think of as a traditional magic sheet, right? What maybe ETC planned or thought we were going to do when we started. You can see the overhead truss rig, right? Group 101. I like to see group numbers on the pages really clearly. They're a little hard to see when they're off, but the channel numbers are there. And I can see sort of get around the show very quickly. On the side, there are ladders that go up and down, so like 111, 112. Those are the profiles, 221, 222. Those are wash units. It's interesting when I think about when I'm cueing a show, I'm thinking very profile or wash. I'm not thinking, oh, that's this kind of profile or this kind of wash. That's a second layer thinking for me. So the shapes of those or the colors of those become really important as I understand them. What else? Oh, so you can see I have the 4 follow spots. I can track what's going on there. And then Brad made these lovely little buttons on the side, right? And what I can do is, because it's a touch screen that I'm working with, I'll show you a photograph in a few minutes, it's laid down on the desk. No longer am I sitting with what used to be a manila folder on my desk. I'm sitting with this touch screen in front of me, laid out flat, right here on the desk. And now I'm just simply tapping through. I want to go look at the footlights. Okay, well, let's go look at the footlights. Boom, and here's so I touched the footlight button. You can see that the language is a little bit sloppy, right? Movers, foots, band, truss, pixel wagons. I like to keep it really in my vernacular. You know, this is not that I make the magic sheet for me, and I when I'm thinking or working quickly, I don't want a lot of detail. On the Android iPhone side of things, I tend to be on the iPhone side of things. I want less information clearer, as opposed to being able to drill lots of information. And so what you see here on this screen, this is the footlights. Look at all our horsepower in footlights. It was so fortunate to have. These are all Color Force 2 units. And it's so huge, a lot of power, all cut in plexiglass in the deck, except for that V you're seeing on the bottom. And what I'm doing here is basically group 300, group 470, group 640, group 810, right? These are all the different groups. And I do that through what the first channel number would be. So 811, group 811 is the first unit, group 835. So there's ways to break these lights down. And I like to be able to call them a little differently. I also like to be able to drill into them. So Brad very patiently typed in, if you can see it on your screen, I have to use my progressives to get in there. You know, you can see every single channel is pulled out. So the data exists. So this is the Android programmer in me. Like, I want to be able to get into the data. I want to be able to see it. I just don't want it there all the time. Right? And this allows me to go, so like, bang, the actor appears upstage right, and I go, oh, wouldn't it be neat if just one single channel came on and uplit them? Super cool. Okay, now I can sort of hunt and peck specifically, but if I want to just say turn on the upstage line, I can get very quickly, or then I can start using the chunks a little quicker. often this is redundant, often it's unnecessary. It's really what's so neat, or what I'm interested in these magic sheets, is really customizing them to my shortcomings as a designer or the way I think, as opposed to trying to do it right or do it quickly, right? It's like, this is the way I work. It's not great. It's just like, if I see all these numbers on this page, I get really scared and lost. And I'm like, channel, oh my God, there's so many channels. So I actually want a page simpler for me. Is it the most efficient way? It's the same data. Just ignore it, Justin. Oh, well, that's just not the way it works. Continuing on, this is the band platform. The JDRs, the JDC1s, these are these amazing strobe lights that also tilt, right? They're sort of remarkable lights. You can see all the under band walls. It's basically just getting me over to the band platform. How do I do that? And then master groups also, to be able to say, turn the band off, group 1660 out. Here you'll see some of the truss lights, what I'm doing. So these are proscenium truss, house CFI. So again, these are more the truss toners in all the truss and being able to get around. More channels. So here are the wagon, right? So the wagons have up lights, and then sliders. So all those wagons we were talking about, those sliders that move, wagons that move around, and then all the sliders 1 through 5. And you can see, right? 2101 through 2901 is in one stage left, panel 1. Can you imagine having to how to deal with all this data? This is where working with a programmer for me, and working working in queue structure or in command keys. This is where I'm so happy to be able to work with Brad and say, hey Brad, can you take about 6 more inches off of that and make it tuned to the top of the header, because right now it feels like the vertical overshoots the header, right? And then instead of me sort of guessing 5 channels, he can go, 2901 minus out, right? Instead of me trying to call, forget it, what a waste of time and annoying for him. He'd put up with me if I asked him to. It's much faster to put that in his hands, right? So that balance of where can I, and then the macros he can write to sort of say, oh, wait a minute, I know I can actually make that a macro. We're going to do this a bunch of times. And so then I can start to say, hey, Brad, I can start to pass off cue notes or ideas that I need him to solve on a different time or a different schedule, right, if he's in the top of the day. Right, and then also using a magic sheet just as data, right? Just like tombstone data, but I don't want to see the tombstone because it takes up too much space, but I do want to see the channel number. I do want to know how to get to it, right? So candles, right? Oh my God, look at all those cool flicker candles we have. But if I can just make a little box over on the side, then I can say what the channels are and I can see what they're doing. They're running effect 101. Great, good for them. Or, oh, wait, she's going to use this. Okay, can you go to that? I can drill down into the data really quickly. 6821, right? Who could ever remember channel 6821? Some of you out there can. I cannot. This developed in Jagged Pill, and it's something I'm going to do from now on. It's something I was working on with the Scriabin piece I was doing. And what I'm doing is a sort of master group sheet, because I think one of my early things I did that I was really excited about, or didn't know I should be excited about at the time, was I did a lot of drawing classes. And in the drawing classes, they teach you, or one of the things they teach you, and they were sort of doing a romantic drawing version, is to do a lot of gestural work, right? So you take a bold stroke or a bold this, and then you kind of come in and get really detailed. And so what I've done is, because there's so much data and changing pages, pushing, I can go to the Footlight page. Whee, good job, right? When I'm just laying in a queue, bang, I wish the Footlights would come on. I go to this, I keep this page on when I'm sort of initially queuing. Group 10 at full, bang, all the Footlights turn on. So you can see I'm redundantly labeling things. So all the Footlights in this case are group 10. It's not group 810 like we said before. Group 810 is useful to me because that means 811 forward are the channel numbers, the specific channel numbers. So in some ways, group 811, 810 is really useful. But in other ways, like who can remember 810? I can remember, all right, downstage is 1, upstage 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? These are simple tools, right? Which there's a problem. And then grouping using to take things out also then starts to be helpful to me. So what we're burning here is Brad's time and my time and the associate's time in laying this stuff out really, really detailed ahead of time, or sometimes in the morning call. This idea came in as a sort of response to, there's just too much data. I need to simplify this. I need to be able to say, look at the overhead quantums. Like I just want group 30, group 31, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, 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 boom. Super easy to call. I don't know, who cares where they are. That just gets me going quickly. So one page gives me most of the information to get through the show, right? How many of us have been in a situation where the director's like, could you turn that one off? That's like my nightmare when I hear that, because I'm like, oh no, how do I find what that one is? Whatever that one means. Well, now it's super easy. Oh, do you mean group 34 out? No. Group 33 out? No. Group 32 out? Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. Right? On one page. Yeah, I could totally go and pop around. Right? Or there's different ways people work around this. This is not to say, go do it this way. This is the way I'm surviving a tech rehearsal. Because now we have a huge problem with data on the spotlights. Super cool problem. Wow, we don't need spot sheets anymore. Everything's in the desk. They're looking at a puck. Q1, label, pickup, Jimmy John, crossing down left. Awesome. Who puts that in when? Oh, how do we put that in, right? So then all of a sudden we need a magic sheet so that Brad can hop over. Kate can make a collection of notes, right? And then start to fight for the channel for when I'm talking to the director or whatever. Bang, Kate, the spot calling assistant can then take the comm, figure out how to fix it, start layering in the notes, right? And then so that means we need another magic sheet just for this, just for being able to do that. A quick little look at how I think about moving lights. I really like to see the muscle of how they work really quickly. Brad and I talk about color. Hey, Brad, can you put it in a green, please? No, not that green, a little more yellow. And you can see those are little buttons for him that he can drive around and get me there, so that we're gesturally fighting this thing first and then dialing and dialing and dialing and dialing. So I'm not hunting around in a color picker or grabbing the mouse. Oh my God, I don't have the time. I'm going to get lost. This allows us to have a very specific question very quickly, right? And then we can also start to go, hey, Brad, label this ironic blue. We're going to call this ironic blue from now on the show, right? And so instead of trying to hold on to my impulse, could we please have or 83 on the blue backlight, which is helpful to certain people in this room. It's another version of that is, hey, give me full blue, a little red. Okay, great. No, a little. You got too much red. Get it out of there. Yeah. Great. Boom. So having these tools to get us quickly into color. So that is sort of what I wanted to look at in Jagged Little Pill. I did another show that's running concurrently, although of course we're both in pause, called Moulin Rouge.
Justin, before we go ahead, do you have a moment for a quick question before we kind of switch gears a little bit?
Sam, you're a genius.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. Just one that came up right now that, since we just covered it, Ari, the follow spots. Phil Kong is asking, with so much more overlap, meaning the programmer is doing more data management for other aspects of the show, has there been any pushback on the union side about the division of labor?
The only one touching the board is the programmer. So there's not, that, and that's really important because, of course, there would be pushback because we would be stealing someone's job, and that's inappropriate. And I really want to support that. We need that to support our unions, right? Especially now we're aware of the power of our unions in this crisis. So what that meant is more sweat for Brad, more Kate being stepped on, more like I'm used to having the channel be mine. Brad, and when I work with Brad, if I want to speak, I get to speak. And now I'm having to be a little more patient and say, like, are we caught up on spots? Are we caught up on spots? Caught up on spots? No, and then the associate will pop in and say, Justin, we're not there yet because Kate and the assistant and the programmer are busily trying to do as many notes as they can. What's exciting then is we're not printing, running someone upstairs to hand in the follow spot sheets. Oh my God, changes again, or oh, I hope they can keep updated, right? It's live, it's live. So there are totally data problems of getting them stuff in the machine. That's something that we absolutely have to deal with going forward. Other questions?
Gianna just wanted a clarification. So for those follow spot stations, each one of those was using a Nomad Puck, is that correct?
Yeah, super exciting, because now each spot can have its own data, right? We can, or each queue stack, or we can start to, so then each front light has its own queue stack. Wow, now we can, they only see what their business is. They don't need to worry about what everything else is going on. Hi, Victoria. I don't have my queue list I keep in the desk. I don't feel any reason to have an Excel sheet running next to me because the desk has all that information. Right? So I don't use, the question is, how, do I keep any traditional queue lists sort of running separately? And I really depend on, when I first came up, I came up in a time when we were tracking moving lights. Does anyone remember doing that? You sort of had to say, like, it came up here and it went up to 50 and it aimed down right. And then you would sort of say where it was used and where, because there were sort of very important specials. And now it's like, well, we look it on the desk. Why would we also keep this other file set over there? Let's have the desk. Let's demand that the desk can show us this data, show us in spreadsheets, show us what's going on. I love Brad's always hopping around Brad's always hopping around in spreadsheet for me. Hey, Brad, is 21 available? Boom, hopping over, showing me. Why would I ask the associate when there's, or the assistant, when someone is there? When Brad's already, his head is in the desk. Boom, switches views. Next question.
And speaking of Brad, do you know roughly how much prep time went into building all of these magic sheets? I mean, what was the process for that?
Couldn't have been more than 2 hours.
Yeah.
ETC is working really hard at making this easier, and that's probably like the next release is what I'm really excited to hear from them. I tried to get a smile out of Nick Gons, but I couldn't get one. It's a huge amount of work. It's all hand coding. It's back in the, and clearly it's one more thing, augmented goodness that's coming. That's going to be our new little head scratching, wow, how cool tool, just like magic sheets are. But it does bring us back to like Mac Paint times, and it starts to say, well, I already know how to do this in Vectorworks. Why can't I do it on your computer? Because of course we know why we can't do that. But our impulse is, I should say, command equal, and it would a distributed array. But here we are.
And then a couple more spot-related questions for you. Jake is wondering if you ran into issues balancing the different fixtures that you had, especially the diffusion and zoom between your spots. And then folks are wondering if there are other programs that you were using alongside EOS, like Focus Track, Spot Track, or MLA, and also just the queue stack setup for those follow spots.
Oh my God, so many. All right, you're gonna just keep me on track, Sam. All right.
Yep.
How cool that now, when I want the front light to run at like 50%, the poor operator's not trying to roll a dial and try and get pretty close to it, right? But now I just say at 50, please. That's the full for spot 1 to be in there. So right, I can write the intensity into the queue stack, right? So I get color and intensity. I didn't mention that earlier. Sorry. And that allows me much more control over what's happening. What it takes away, though, is what happens when there's a swing who's slightly different color. Right now we don't have as much control or override to do that. It is possible, but because we've made it so precise, right? I'm allowing myself to be such a precision. I don't have as much on the operator's side. I sort of fit in the middle of really trusting the operators and recognizing that it's a job, and there are people who are out sick and take vacation days, and so we have to respect and give them a reasonable show to operate. So yes, we want the best, and I think Local One provides some of the best spot operators I've worked with, and yet we need to realize these are human beings doing their work. Then you had like 8 other questions.
Yeah, I did that terribly. This is only my second time.
No.
Was there a separate queue stack for each follow spot? So
Yes.
each op was saying, okay, this is all I have to worry about is the only thing I'm seeing in front of me. And then all of those, great. And then
for Kate, who's Kate McGee, who's now looking at a monitor going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. How do I track all this information at once? Again, in the olden days, you just said spot 3, pick up whoever, and then off they go, and they sort of would do that, and then they could even cover for you, right? Like, you told me to pick them up last time, so I picked them up again because, I thought, versus now where it's like, it's not in the desk, it's not happening. And so if we ran into changes, the director would say, Justin, they're the wrong color. Why are they that color? We had a tracking issue or something else that happens all the time in our queuing data when we're moving fast, or right? Like, wait, who's on that spot? What? Right? So tracking that data becomes a different challenge.
And you throw Brad under the bus in those situations, is that right?
Well, specifically, I would shout at the director that it's the programmer's fault. No, it's not.
Were there any programs you were using side by side with EOS, like Focus Track, Spot Track, or MLA in those as part of that process?
Just answer that as well as my teammates can. Again, this is not just me driving this. I know Chris King's a big FileMaker user. And he uses that in a lot of his work in terms of negotiating all the work notes and the other data that's being distributed. I'm sure they were keeping track of FileMaker hand tracking of what this is, because again, it's like that switching over from like paper sheets to trusting the computer. Like at first, we just don't know what's going to go wrong. So the redundancy of that starts to happen.
A lot of people, I think we can take one more and then we'll move on, and then some of the stuff we can save. A lot of people are wondering where all the rest of those pucks were going.
Saddle. I have to talk. So then, right, so you've got pucks. Oh, sorry, magic sheets, right? So I'll show you. I'm going to get down in Moulin Rouge. We'll see it. But what's happening is on the tech table, we're seeing that I need maybe 4 monitors from my station, and then 4 monitors for the associates, and 4 monitors for the assistants. And then, oh wait, what's going on back of house, and what's going on stage left for the stage manager, right? There's a lot of data that needs to be distributed in every place. So these puck points allow us to get that information on a sort of low-tech way. We don't need to rent a big, heavy desk. The puck is able to distribute that data, show it to me, and respond in touchscreen format.
Great. Why don't we keep going? I think these other ones are a bit more general, and we can hit those at the next little break.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
It's on the slide. I did this is from Boston, but I did a show called Moulin Rouge. And it is ornate. It is rococo. It is luxe. It is over the top in its amount of scenery, of music, of performance, of choreography, and hopefully of light. This is my idea, is that there's this sort of shattering crystal chandelier full of sparkles and light that we sort of see and go from this very, like I said, ornate or rococo quality of light, and then sort of break it down slowly into a sort of stillness or clarity. So right now all of a sudden the footlights start to make more sense as we see the theatrical quality, right? All the light bulbs, and then at the same time trying to add neon, trying to add these sort of very bold, simple silhouettes, stunning costumes by Kathy Zuber, right? And then Sonia doing the choreography. This is the top of Act 2. Olivia, in terms of using the lights, right? Like there's sort of an old-fashionedness at the same time that there's a more new pop sensibility, right? So like R40 strip lights, I came up using them. I love them. And still love the quality of light that they use. It was a big feature of them in the second act where we do a huge haze dump, and then it blasts through the performers. There's real neon in the show. Each of those, there's 4 control channels on that L'Amour sign behind. to a let it feel. Right? We know how to make LED neon, but we also know that real neon has that certain toothiness that it has a sort of grit to it that's a little more exciting. Breaking out, see that little windmill in the background, how that's broken apart, all the little individual windows and the sort of mini Montmartre. And then big giant light walls that can fly in. You can see the sort of pink neon hearts that surround the frame. And then big, bold, intense color gestures. Here's the Duke, sort of the other bad guy, right? You know, that his room, this is incredible scenery by Derek McLean. It does not stop. So much scenery. So you get so much scenery, so much choreography, so much, and I wanted to show you, start with the section first. If you can see here on the section, you can drill in and like, oh my gosh, it's so thick with scenery. If you look at those line sets, I actually, sorry, I'm going back once. You know, where do you put the lights to light all this stuff? You see where the distance between the first electric and the second electric is like 10 feet. It's a huge distance. And then they built the theater out into the theater, well, the passerelle, where you can act out in the theater. So not only is there so much stuff, there's so much space required to light it. And so what I needed was a really dynamic rig. Again, it's a huge amount of moving equipment. And this is using 3500 Qs, the XLX4s that I really love for their ability to spot down really cleanly. There's quantums in this rig. Sorry, the Broadway didn't have the quantums. This is all X4, XL, Boston did. And then, where am I? And you can see how layered it is. And each of those lines is a different piece of scenery. And not only are we trying to deal with where the scenery is on stage, but more difficulty really is where does it go when it's off stage? Many of you know in the Broadway houses and the wings, they fly it up into the air, right? Chain hoist. So the crew is really doing a ballet at the same time that the company is moving on stage. So much work in how to orchestrate and deal with this, right? So you can see, just giving another look at the section, how to get light in on the set, because because it has a lower, you can see in where the proscenium arch is, and then some of these scenes need quite low. The balcony rail starts to have to work very hard, low in flat front light. Here you can see a little cleaner what's going on in the section, right? And then working with the sound team, the set team, to integrate the lighting from the beginning, so that the lighting and working around the sound needs. Again, I'm trying to figure out Peter Hylinski's sound needs, so that we're coming to hear a pop musical, right? Like, it can't sound mediocre. It has to sound like the most amazing thing you've ever heard. So yeah, my moving lights are important, but you know, like, at what point in time can I find another way to light it? Easier than he can find another way to put an entire cluster of speakers, right? All of it's a puzzle to be figured out. And I'm super fascinated by this particular problem, because it just keeps going in terms of how many layers and drilling down into details. So here's the front of house shot, what's happening, using the front of house truss, what's happening over there, and then way out by the booth rail, 3 conventional follow spots. Running our front lights. And then here's the balcony rail drawing, and then additionally all the footlights. Now you can see the footlights aren't able to be as bold as they were in Jagged Little Pill for me, and this is because all of the lifts in the deck. And so we worked really closely with scenery just for the structure of what can I do to get lights in the deck. And it becomes a huge visual reality for the people in the balcony, right? They see these sort of white, somewhat frosted lines. And so designing a show that also makes sense from the balcony or the mezz, seeing what those images look like. Here's more balc rail. And then also we put moving lights back of house. We need to, so that when you walk in to the Moulin Rouge, there's a speaker pipe. We hung a bunch of auras, around the columns, hung string lights. You really need to, it needs to pass sort of the sniff test of, is this the Moulin Rouge? And my hope is that, yeah, it feels like the Moulin Rouge in here. This is it's such an exciting room to be in. because the lights had to be so low, a really key thing I had to find was a light that could be silent and bright. And the solo wash that I worked with Bobby Hale to get some solo washes on the show in Boston, and they ended up being perfect for us in Broadway. And what's exciting to me about this light is it's a silent light, right? So you can hang it on the back rail, put it above the audience's head, and there's not some whirring fan noise for the whole show. And I can do razor sharp shutter cuts or Fresnel soft. So big drops, anything I need to get up and in, I can actually do with these units. Big, bold, sharp color, clean. I use a high CRI lamp, so when I wanted to pop faces, I put a ring on it, is in the show, like bang, it's like, we call it, Brad and I made up a color called blush, right? What does blush mean? Well, we all could get our swatch books out, or we could say, blush is a tuned color that is a certain light pink for this show, right? All the scenery needs to come in and out, so there's a lot of working ladders in the show. You can see all those arrows moving, and there's a lot of stuff that has to be juggled. So all of these, it's sort of like tracking a watch, right? These things all need to move over here. A Rube Goldberg machine of like, how do I track all of this data at the same time? And trying to figure out what really, to try and hold on to it, and hopefully show up and be creative at the same time. Again, right? Like I worry about what happens to us when we're watching data as opposed to watching the stage, right? It's like you can certainly learn a journey of a certain light and go, oh my God, that light looks like a crazy person programmed it, or what's happening on the stage. And I know that there are many people who come and see me in my early phases and they're like, Justin, there's a light swinging around like crazy in your show. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'm still just trying to keep up with the show. 2 light walls fly. There's an elevation view on the right side of your screen. 2 giant light walls flying. This is Alex Timber's real fascination and excitement about light. I feel really honored to work with him, and this sort of idea of a mashup, right? It's both the antique or historic quality of the Moulin Rouge, but also sort of modern pop concert. All of these just singles, a wall of park hands and surrounded by truss and neon. So this is that you can see that this is what went into the audience. So this is called the passerelle, getting into these. And then, thank goodness for Jeremy Wallers and his crack team, because there's a lot of like, I don't know, Jeremy, they're going to put an elephant in the house. We're going to have to get the lights around it. And through his grace and curiosity about how we're going to make the show, there wasn't a sort of, well, I need to hang the truss, Justin, show me where to do it. There was a lot of patience and backdoor thinking in his work to say like, okay, we better have these things available because it could be this, or this. And because this is when we came to Broadway, our second time working, he had a better sense, and I was really thankful, of an ability to sort of work as an artist alongside of me, right? He's really thinking about, okay, Justin probably is going to want a light there. And he's going to suggest that safer sidearm thing he always comes up with, but I might want to suggest these 4 other ideas that might tune more with what the scenery is doing, right? And so here's another example of working with a production electrician who's not just sort of doing what I say, which would be my nightmare, but rather working with someone who's sort of on board the ship of making it, thinking, like, has a sensibility of what's happening, working as an artist alongside of the structure of the thing. And it's something I try and maintain in all my teams, is to sort of say, like, let's get on board and make this thing together, and how do we get there? Oh my gosh, the light bulbs are everywhere in this room. They just don't stop. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to turn on that set of light bulbs over there down right when that scene comes on? Well, yeah, it would be nice. Okay, well, then you have to control those. Oh, but wait, wouldn't it be nice also if they could chase? Yeah, it would be nice if they could chase. Okay, so every single section of light bulbs needs to be broken down and controlled. And then also figure out where the data is. Where am I keeping all of this data of all the light bulbs in the room, and how am I thinking about it? I did everything on 4-circuit chase, right? Pop music's and quarter time or 4/4. So what I'm trying to figure out is like 1, 2, 3 is not how I wanted to use. So I did it. Everything is in 4 split from center. So if you want to do left, right, or that they can. This is a Brad Gray suggestion from the beginning. Is, well, we want it not just to go left to right or right to left, but we want it to be able to go from the center chase out, right? or block on, or chase left, chase right. And so that's why many times you see 8 circuits of control on some of this, so that I'm able to say, oh, look, there's an exciting thing happening down left. Chase all the lights into down left. Oh, how exciting, it explodes out. Okay, chase it down right as it explodes out. Oh, now split center, chase out, right? Again, and you can imagine, this isn't the first step of cueing. This is through watching it many, many times. One of the joys of working with Alex Timbers is he's really, sort of a maestro in terms of his ability to steer a technical rehearsal, so that he's delivering the notes to me, the lighting designer, working with a choreographer, working with the people on stage, working with the stage manager to make sure that he's set up so the second that everyone's done, we're already set up on stage and ready to get back into it again, right? We're working with these high-level directors who are watching how to use the time, which is such a commodity in these spaces, and saying, we need to get the more passes I have on the show, the better work I can do. Again, more data, right? So here's a piece of scenery and all the uplights in the scenery and all the neon hearts. Each one of those layers on the top there has a neon heart that's individual. Then there's all these little footlights. And then on the back of the thing, there's fiber optics, but not just one channel, because that wouldn't be enough. We should have 4 channels of fiber optics. And we should have a uplight glow from the city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my hope is it should feel like what's going on in here. Just remember, if you remember that the first time I saw Moulin Rouge, like the camera movement was like, wait, what? You can't do this. My hope is that when you're watching the show, that there's almost it's effortless and at the same time so ornate, and you're being brought along on this sort of magic roller coaster. Right? Here's the heart portal, one of the sort of, you saw in that first shot, those heart portals in. There's LED pucks, RGB pucks on the outside, then MR16 lamps as blinders, then there's LED tape facing in, LED tape facing out, RGBW, right? And not pixel tape, thank goodness. And then LED neon, and then light bulbs, 4 circuits of light bulbs, right? It continues and continues and continues. So much data. So I promised a picture of this earlier, and I wanted to show this is sort of my layout at the tech table, and it actually became simpler as we moved on. So so I keep the script. I keep a hand script. I'm not interested in a computer script. I work very quickly. I keep a yellow sketch. I like a number 2 pencil and a yellow sketch pad, a yellow lined pad. I write notes. I write notes from what the director says. I write notes from my own stuff. Very important to me is that cue stack there to my right, and then also the magic sheet in front of me. I'll show you a photo in a minute. Eventually, to house left, you see there's a keyboard, and then there's another 2 monitors. I actually got rid of those eventually because I found them distracting. It was too much data again. The other thing that's missing from this shot, I'll show you in a second, is it's a tiny little iPad, those iPad minis. I keep one of those on there because I'm very fortunate. Nick Solium, the associate on this project, is very patient with me and will take my dictation of notes as I'm running through the show. And so Q10 brighter, Q12 pull down left, Q13 what's that pink, right? And he's dutifully clicking and making a very simple spreadsheet. And it's a Google spreadsheet, and it populates in a little iPad right next to me, so I can sort of, just like a punch list, go through and knock it out, make sure I'm doing all of the punch list of my notes. Again, how can we get the most amount of work done in the shortest amount of time? This is Nick's space. It's super interesting that he is using that computer space in the center for his own personal computer or anything he needs to get done along the way. So he's able to track both what the show is, and then so you can see the cue stack and tombstone view, right? And then there's now something I'm about to talk about in a few minutes, but that you're seeing a monitor of the stage view. And that's going to be something I want to point at in just a moment here about how we dealt with that. But what I'm really excited about these spaces, oh, here it is how simple it is. Look, I really did sit behind the table. It's a picture of me sitting there. What I'm really excited, so there you can see just that little iPad over there on the left. It's just did I do it? Cross it off. And I don't delete it because did I do that note? Oh my God. No, I can go back and look. No, I crossed that note off. And then also whoever wrote it can do it. Or I can say, come back to it tomorrow during dry tech, I need scenery set up for it. So we can save them and do them. And it just scrolls along totally simply, very simple. And it's sort of, it's a very expensive notepad, really. But because it's low profile, it keeps it in it. It's able to us. And I used to have to say, hand me the notes. And they would hand me the notes, and I would have to try and read their typing or read their writing, and it was always, why are you writing this way? And of course, I'm saying notes so quickly. Who can blame them? But what I like so much about this view is it points at, first of all, how much I'm depending on the team, right? There's not tons of data in front of me because I'm really trusting who's tracking the follow spots, right? What's going on with all the tombstones. I'm not worried about intensities of, like, is the light going from 40 to 50 in Q7? This used to be something I would be super concerned about 10 years ago in my lighting design. And now I'm watching something different. It's really interesting to me in terms of not the data I'm watching is more about the shape and the color of how, in terms of the magic sheet. Absolutely, I care about intensity. It's not to say that. It's just that 40, who cares if it's at 40? The audience doesn't care if it's at 40. They care that it's not bright enough. And so I say, Brad, channel 45 isn't bright enough. Make it brighter. And he goes, plus 10? And I go, make it brighter. Plus 10, plus 10, plus 10, plus, oh, it's Justin, it's at full. Okay, I needed to come up with another plan. Grab 14, drag it over there from the side. Can you hit the person down right? So we're working together to solve those problems as opposed to, me saying, at 80, at 85, right? And certainly I'm still using that language. So here's how I'm starting to deal with the data. Boy, Moulin Rouge, because it had so many different things it needed to do, it had so many different kinds of light. There's conventionals, there's moving, all different kinds of moving lights. Lation gave us some amazing laser pointed lights. They were not lasers, but the sort of micro beams of light. That was really, really exciting. The tools just kept going on and on and on. And so again, using these, you can see Brad made this beautiful buttons on the side, right? Super easy to click through. The latency is true. It isn't as fast as I'd like it to be, but it does happen, right? And so I can get through the show pretty quickly. And so I'm able to drill into this info. Whoa. Right, so here's how I'm tracking these heart portals. There's 3 heart portals. And you can see all the way down at the bottom, it's a group, all portal groups. Light bulbs, MR16s, RGB neon, RGBW tape, TW, tunable white, because you never know, RGB pucks, color blasts, right? They're lit from the side. Right? And I'm interested in, again, how do we feather, how do we fade? How do we put effects that have a delay so it goes bang and sort of collapses out like a fireworks display, right? How do we figure all that out? It all needs to be here so I can drill into it. So when I'm first queuing, it might be group 700 at full, group 700 effect 101, or group 700 offset random effect 101. Effect 101 is my sort of default on-off blinky cue. I make so I can make a on-state, off-state effect, absolute effect. I can slam it in so that way that everyone in the room knows this is a place where it should blink. Justin understands that this will animate at one point in time, hopefully with some sophistication. Sometimes it should feel just like rough and messy and like what's going on in here. And that's what I'm working on. But you can see all the data here is grabbable. So I can get very specific, or I can just say group 781, which would be the second heart portal stage left color blasts out. Right? Because maybe I want to have bang, 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 bang for the color blast from the side. Well, then I should be able to grab them very quickly. It's a balance of how much data, because of course you want all these things pre-built in lots of groups, and then when you have so many different red boxes on the stage, like what does it all mean? Beautiful work again by Brad and Nick as they worked with me on how to figure out how to break this stuff down, right? That gorgeous, gorgeous neon sign that's flown in that are on so many Instagram shots right now of the Derek McQueen scenery of that red neon, and then, okay, there's a front and there's a back, and they should be able to track, and they should be able, oh my gosh, so much data, right? The windmill, how do we have each blade controllable? How do we have all this stuff out? I'm sure there's many other ways. Well, this is the way that worked for me at the time. Footlight page. And you can see all the way down at the bottom, group 400, all of them. 401, the passerelle, the downstage of the plaster. 402, upstage of the plaster. So absolute, like when I'm making a queue, they're downstage. Group 401 is full in red. Update Q5. Done. Oh, actually, could you get rid of the center and do this and do this? Yeah, absolutely, we can do that on the second pass. Or if we need to in the beginning because we want a bolder, cleaner look, we can I can drill in from the beginning. Some lusters in the room. They did some work for us. I just looked at the scrollers in the show. I mean, the thing was meant to feel like it's so ornate and so much equipment and so much. In some ways, it didn't want to have the sort of orderly machine that Jagged Little Pill had, right? Where that sort of felt like there was a real machine holding on to it. This really wanted to feel like, how are they doing this? How could there be that much equipment? Wait, now there's a scroller turned on? Like, so that everyone in the room is sort of is hopefully sort of overwhelmed by that much stuff. Again, here's some of this moving light stuff. I rarely got over here, but this is always nice to see the gobo layout very quickly. The light walls flying in, how to get a hold of them. Here's some of the theater back wall. It goes on, and look, there's the teens room and a mini Eiffel Tower down in the lower corner. Oh, look, we should be able to control each corner of the thing. We should be able to have LED tape that goes on the side, just uplights the thing. Oh, look, the neon. So you see group 900 over here on the right side of your screen. That breaks down. We put in this LED neon because we had UL wire on the edge of the stage, which was a joke because somebody was putting color force 2s in the deck, blasting the uplight, and the poor UL wire, which would be sort of a traditional safety approach, no one could see it. And so what we had to do is install flat top LED neon, and then I could control the color of it, the intensity of it. It becomes something that's both a safety choice and an intensity choice, right? A visual choice, right? So I can like make it the whole thing pop. The Duke comes on stage, and bang, it goes solid blue in a way that we haven't been seeing before. The scrolls are all laid out because I need to know what colors are in the machine of the thing. Here's some of the conventionals. You can see some of the Fourth Electric. This is all this sort of psych or drop package. There was some stuff that there was just one white clear drop. Keeps going. So now there's all this channel. So this is like, oh gosh, you got to have atmospherics, and then all the diddler switch stuff. There's a switch down right that has all this different control in it. If I haven't said thank you, Jeremy Wallers, let me say it again. There's so much data and control all over the room, and holding on to, right? Confetti cannons, snow rollers, right? Running lights, of course, we know about these needs. It does not stop. And then a color blast, right? Color blasts, as we know, are rather are not as new technology as some other LED lights. But for my needs, I need red LED light because I need to have that 0 count sharpness. Well, sometimes I'd like blue, and maybe in between sometimes. Well, then color blasts actually become a useful lighting choice. It's a cheaper unit to get a lot of because most shows are thinking, I really need something more precise. But when I'm uplighting the stage right wall or house right wall, it's red drape. Yeah, so there's some dimension in the red. Okay. And when we ran into problems, we of course swapped them out. Here's some of the control units of Mini Martha. And then these panels, each of the panels had a light box inside, all LED as well. So one of the ways we track the data, here's a little picture of the screen. This is Nick Solium's did some work to reach out to PRG and start to say, okay, so all the automation is sending out data. ETC knows how to take data, right? The TI can take information in. So Nick has done some work Harry Potter before, and certainly been around the block himself. And what he was able to do, this isn't the first time it's done, but really remarkable, is to say, where is the automation right now? Because of course I can't see where the light ladders are. So all those big horsepower lights in the wings, are they in the right place to do a clean shin shot? I've asked them to be, but I don't know if they're there, or maybe we're out of sequence. And so what he was able to do is to import that data from automation and say, oh, look, reality is ladder 1 is on the deck. it's expected in this queue stack, right? He can just put the data into the queue stack where they should be, and then I can just check it out, right? So in this case, everything's on trim for what it should be in queue wherever we are, Q527 part 1, right? So we can punch around in this, and then this would live update for where we're at. So I'm able very specifically to know without saying to stage management, because they're juggling all that other stuff to figure out how to set up the machine and keep it going. They don't need me to punch in on their channel and say, are the ladders in the right place? Now we know. So we've got one more piece of information on our side. The next thing is, this is another thing that I thought was really exciting that we incorporated more of. I had been doing this by hand, but Nick showed me a way how to do this in the screen, into the video. So what I want you to imagine is that sound is running a capture video the whole show from the background, right? And that's what pump to stage management, pump down to the orchestra. Everyone can see what's going on. It's a sort of master shot. Lovely. And so what we're doing is we're doing a picture-in-picture shot, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, of what cue we're in and what time code we're receiving at the same time that we're recording the show. And so what this is doing, of course, everyone's been paid for media rights, so this is all in the up and up with making sure everyone's what we're doing for the show. We're taking care of all the protection, labor protections. But what we're allowing us to do now is see in time code precisely where things should go, what cues should go where. And we can figure out how to make them fit in on the show, exactly where they need to be. So now I can say to Nick, hey, Nick, Q180 felt a beat late, which used to be a stage management cue or note. But now, because it's on time code and most of the show is on click, Nick can take the note, go while I'm doing the cueing or the visual note, and now go through and figure out, oh, we're 7 frames late, because he can just scrub back and forth on that monitor I showed you that was dark, or look at the master screen and be like, oh, 7 frames late. And so he can make a whole list of data next to him so that I can say, Nick, I'm done with my notes. Bang, he puts in his timing notes into the desk through Brad Gray's work. So that way, the comm channel is getting the most work, and we're thankfully working Brad Gray once again harder than he's very patient with us. So you can see any time, right, as we're punching through the show, the time code moves, the cue stack moves, and then when we're recording this, we can go then drag up the director or the choreographer and say, wait, what do you mean by that's not coming in the right time? Could you tell us where it goes? They tell us where it goes. I just figured it out in the click. Now, Jagged Little Pill didn't run on click. That was all done by hand. We just needed the cue stack to see what was going on. But here, we needed the time code because so much of that was important. So, for example, Sparktacular came and provided us with some amazing sparks on the show, which the timing of that is really, really precise. When you press go, they're not there. So you have to create, so then we need to make a cue that fires them, 0.063 or whatever before the thing, before the button of the number so that it's going to fire on the button. Well, now with time code, right, we just say, okay, lock it in. And instead of just sort of hunting and pecking, we just take the video and everyone's working from the same thing. It's playing in the stream. So what I'm excited about, or what we're trying to do, and I hope we're seeing, is this use of more data and then also more simplicity, right? Like I came up downtown working, like trying to make 24 dimmers work, trying to figure out how to get it all to work, and like stretching 24 dimmers as far as we could. And now I'm finding I'm doing the same skill set on a larger scale. And it's part of a resource management of my team of like, how can I empower them to do amazing work at the same time with me? How are we all juggling the data, to orchestrate and help make this thing drive as fast as we can so we can explore and look at things in a way that I'm used to doing with 24 dimmers and an Express 24, right? That I'm used to figuring out how to make things work in a very simple way. Well, now I just need more teammates. So I hope that's really clear to this presentation that these are things I'm doing, but I'm doing it with because of some of the top people in the business. Brad Gray gets a feature here. Jeremy Waller's there, Roy Furf. So we're making our show with this important, really important artists and also technicians, and really thankful for their work. Well, Sam, that's what I'm supposed to say right now.
Great.
Maybe you have some questions for me or things I can answer.
Yeah, let's start with the most recent stuff. So Paul Kilsdonk would like to know, was the whole show on timecode? I think referring to Moulin Rouge, or just was it in sections? What does the stage manager do if there is more applause one show or actor milks a moment?
Yeah, so on purpose we don't timecode things that can be in a sort of vamping area. We'll really try and stay away from that, because again, my interest is in supporting the production, not in supporting my like you. So what I'm trying to do is make it feel effortless. And can you imagine if that poor actor had to, like, you can only wait for this much laugh because the like you is going to happen next. Like, no. Those are things where we can really use the skill set of stage management, that artistry of their artistry of knowing, okay, here's the button release. They know button peak applause, right? Like, where would peak applause go? Also, sound isn't giving time code on everything. Not everything's on click, and so it's not helpful to try and to ask for everything to be on click for what it is. So many of the numbers, because it's pop musical, because of sort of the Alex Timbers, and because the requirement for everything to be so sharp and specific versus sort of like a loose rock and roll show, it needed to be locked down in certain places, but not in all places.
A couple of people are asking about how much was brought over from Boston and how much changed, both on the data programming side of things and just physically the space, the plot, etc.
It was, I brought the key stack over, and there were things that I just said, can you enter those, Brad? And thankfully, Brad Gray had some time on the desk ahead of time to sort of make a pass at, I think here's a good place for the light to start. And sometimes that was dead on, and I was like, Brad, we're done, let's go home. And sometimes it was like, oh gosh, what a nightmare, through no fault of his own. We're just trying to figure out what to do. And so many things change when you change the space, right? I took out a lot of conventionals. The conventionals didn't cut against the moving light rig, and tried to, in terms of budgeting, try to figure out how to get more moving equipment in the room. So the rig did change. The scenery was mostly the same, though there were some changes there. We looked at some different things. But the producers were really smart and really supportive to Alex Timber's process, and which, of course, with the whole company, and saying, you need a full tech process. And we really had a big tech process and preview process where we really got to make, I hope, a really special show through. When we came from Boston, we didn't just try and put it up again. There really was a rediscovery to make sure that this was the most spectacular thing.
And then how much on shows that are this big and this complicated, how much are you paring that stuff down when you're looking at it moving or going on the road?
We're going to figure that out. The issue, of course, will be time, and what can and can't happen. Is there a light bulb that travels safely that still has a filament quality, right? I mean, there's lots of issues. Then what happens? And I think that this is a show that needs to have a certain quality of spectacle, right? So you can't just phone it in with a couple of par cans and some neon and say, like, hey, it's the same thing. It needs to have an ornateness again, so that the audience really feels that. So we will need to, out of necessity, carve some down, especially because the houses change, right? Like, what is a front of house position in different theaters? Sometimes it just doesn't work, right? So then, can we trust that exists? What's the balcony rail going to be? How many units can we hang on that reasonably, given the load-in time? So there's some big challenges, but I think actually exciting challenges. And I know that the team we're working on it right now is already, out in front of it in a way that I think we'll have to remake the show in many ways. But I know that we'll have a Moulin Rouge-ness that I'm really going to be excited to make.
Jeffrey Richardson would like to know, do you prefer to have a specific requests and goals from a director in terms of design, or more of a blank check where you can design at your free will?
I I work differently with different directors, and what I'm interested with Alex Timbers is he's very specific about what he's interested in, right? Oh, Justin, I should have like a lot of light bulbs and stuff that you do. Oh, can you show me what that would be? And then I'll be quite specific about like lamp types, give him samples really so he can see it. He is very knowledgeable for lighting, and so I'm always trying to make sure he's a part of um, the architecture of light, right? Showing him how I'm laying out the rig, what I'm fighting for, what I'm interested in. And by fighting for, I mean like really just trying to figure out how to make the budget work with the most muscle so that he can, I'm really looking to him to guide me to make sure that he and I are going to be in the theater working together towards something exciting. He's not someone that's like, no, less, 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 less. It really is like, how could there be more? Where could there be more innateness? How could we put this in? And I'm always trying to stay in front of him by giving him, several new ideas. And then trying to figure out with Derek, like, how does it work in his scenery in a way that he's excited by and doesn't feel like, ooh, Justin, that's the ugliest thing I ever saw. Why you got to put that there? One day we looked up and there was a scenic painter working away on one of our moving lights to sort of gold leaf it. They're beautiful, you know what I mean? They're really, really beautiful, and it's a way of working together to make them fit into the room. So I don't, there's never I think because light is so hard for me, it's hard to talk about ahead of time. It's super easy to say this is the blue moment or this is the scary moment. And I work with my students and I have some language to talk about that. But I work really hard to have a lot of tools in the room that I can work very quickly and show the director a lot of different things. I really trust showing more than talking ahead of time.
Really good question from Jillian that I don't think we've touched on yet this afternoon. Do you use any pre-visualization programs? If you do, how much of the show do you cue out in the program before tech?
I'm exploring working with Capture, and I'm exploring working a little bit with Vision, more so with Capture, and I'm interested in how they solve some of the geometry. So in some ways, I'm curious about what Augmented will bring, because I think there may be some solutions there that I've been solving outside. I'm less interested in pre-visualization as a tool that lays in cue stacks for me at this moment, because I never know I wish I knew what I was doing better. And I worry that if I get ahead of myself in pre-visualization, I will often feel like I don't want to delete those cues, or I have to keep them, or it puts a lot of data in the desk that's scary to me. That like then I have to add enter or get rid of, and where I feel like, oh, but I worked so hard at 2 a.m. on the cue, I don't want to delete it. Versus the sort of ruthlessness of that's not working, get it out of there. So I think it goes, but I just did a piece that would travel to Amsterdam that I couldn't be as much as I wanted to be at, and so we made it with the director in the pre-visualization, and the associate went and tuned it from there. Like there was no the artistry had to be done in the pre-visualization world. So where I can, I'm using pre-visualization as a tool to see what shots will work, what possibility, especially with moving things, right? I can now start to track scenery and lighting at the same time versus looks. I am asking my students, I do believe that this will continue to be more and more of a tool that we'll use moving forward. I'm asking my students to be virtuosic in it. I think that's one of the ways that early career designers can set themselves apart and ahead of the generations above them.
But I think the interesting thing from that is thinking about it more as a tool than it is about the process, right? I think that a lot of people get caught up in feeling like, well, I have to previs this because I previs everything. Or, yeah, I have to go in, make sure I get this all done before I walk into the room. Where to me, it sounds like your process, you prefer a bit more space and a bit more organic room for you to kind of grow out and not feel like you've designed yourself into a very nice box. probably made with like an HMI here and a strobe on extra kind of hanging up over here. But then I got this idea for this thing. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it is, and Sam and I worked together a few times, but for me, the artistry of theater making, it's like really being, just like an actor, it's like really being present in the room and really studying and watching. And so in some ways, I'm interested in the architecture or the structure of cue making, right? But I'm also interested in the sort of open-heartedness of discovery. And so sometimes you just got to say like, yeah, I got crazy ideas. Good for you, Townsend. Lock this in, put on the blue backlight, punch in the sides, off we go. Good show, everybody. And sometimes it's to say like, what if we only lit the show from the footlights? What would happen? Cool, let's explore. You know, in a way, the pre-visualization, you'd be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You've got all these other tools.
So that kind of makes me think that the takeaway from kind of a lot of this presentation for me was basically, here's all of the tools you use so that you can spend the least amount of time possible looking at them, right? So that all you're actually looking at is the stage and everything is a glancing iPhone app that you're quickly swiping away before you get back to the work. I mean, is that a fair?
Yeah. And that I know that I can keep giving really, because I'm interested in that big gestural work, but I'm also, and maybe hopefully it shows, really interested in minute detail and specificity. And so it's not just slamming the HMI on from the side, it's also how does the light kind of swirl off right with the actor running off stage, or how does it sort of spark, how do we make the explosive sparkle? What does that mean? And again, like I know, yeah, so in some ways, yes, how am I like watching and having these ideas as opposed to trying to make the desk drive my ideas? And that's that sort of lovely relationship with the programmer that is so, so effortless for me with Brad Graham.
And actually, I have a question that's been sitting there for quite a while, but I wanted to make sure we got to it today from Colin Choach. His question is, do you think as an industry we need to re-examine when and how programmers are looped into projects? And I know that's like a big question with a lot of people's kind of like political opinions involved and stuff, but just based on like how useful it is to get them in at a certain point, do you find, especially with the relationship that you've built with Brad over these couple shows?
And Colin too. Colin and I have worked together many times actually as a programmer in other ways too. I think I have to do something besides just tell people what to do, and I think part of what I need to do is be in the rehearsal hall and be in the meetings and so forth. And I actually like the fresh eyes that a programmer brings to a rig, that if I didn't tell them what they're supposed to do with the light, they can show me something that maybe I didn't know it could do. Right? Hey, Justin, did you try using 401 through 404 on this? What do you mean? Oh, wow. Yeah, grab it, but now fan it that way. Or no, perfect, update enter, thanks. Right? So I worry, so in some ways, I feel like my job as a lighting designer is coming last to the game of rehearsal, right? The set designer, the choreographer, the director, they've all been there for so long. And it's my job to see with fresh eyes. I bring with me a programmer who's also watching with fresh eyes. I'm sure it's inefficient for them. I'm sure of it. I'm sure I watch Brad or Colin, everyone has to go, oh, that would have been helpful to know a long time ago. And it's a little bit of the efficiency of the machine right now needs to be about the creative process for me. And so I burn that in getting something else. And having a programmer being available to set up a show ahead of time, especially with moving lights. It used to be, it took me a long time to focus the show. I mean, how long did it take me to focus Jagged Little Pill? What I need to do is focus, the moving light programmer needs all that time to focus all those lousy moving lights. It takes forever to make all those, or at least so we can get going. I personally don't run with 55 focus points on the stage. I want to have some numbers to get me down left, get me center left, get me up left, and then steer closer, please. Or, and frequently never that, just sort of off we go. Everyone home, tipping up and coming down stage, 5, 4, 3, 2, great, that's the position. So I feel very lucky to work with many programmers who are on this channel right now, and I'm really happy to see them at Tech.
Sounds like a great time to plug the programming suite in the New York office for all of your needs when you're working for Justin and he's in the rehearsal room and needs you to pre-focus all of his moving lights.
Thank you. I would like you to have that achieved for me, Sam. Thank you. I'm very lucky to work in New York City, and the programming suite has been essential. But it's been very interesting watching my students sort of decide, well, and I'm very curious what augmented will mean for us when we say, okay, you want focus points 1 through 5, we'll just click there. Or like, really, do you want me to do that clicking? Like, is it easier for me just to point at the mouse at the thing? Like, is that really useful time to you? These are things I don't know yet. I'm very curious how the workflow will go.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to hop in here. We're a little bit over time, but I want to say thanks to Sam for being a great moderator. You were fabulous. Thank you so much for doing this. And obviously, Justin, this was a phenomenal presentation with a lot of really, really great information. Thank you for sharing your time. Thanks for sharing all of your ideas. And hopefully we can have you back for another sometime soon. So thank you, everybody, for attending. If there are people who missed this, this will be recorded and posted on the website so that people can check it out. And thanks again. Stay safe, everybody. We'll talk soon.